Hey folks, it is September the 24th, and we're going to go ahead and finish our lecture on supply and all that good stuff. So if I haven't yet, I'm going to post a document from Thomas Sowell. He's a famous American economist, still around today, does a lot of writing, thoughtful person. So make sure you read that and follow the instructions along with it. All right, so when we left off last time, we were talking about how does elasticity apply to supply? Because we already talked about how it went with demand. And so elasticity shows, the ability to change whenever prices change. So let's go on. This is the next one. So this is what happens when you have it. This is what happens when you have a change in supply. A supply curve is only accurate as long as there are no changes other than price that could affect consumers' decision. When factors other than, hey, Mark, never again. Okay. That was wrong on a lot of levels. All right, so don't make it worse now. All right. So a supply curve is only accurate as long as there are no changes other than the price that could affect consumers' decision. So what we're saying there, if there's other factors that go into it, such as like a change in demand or something like that, then it's no longer going to be accurate. So this is a graph where, one of 2 points have to change. If another point changes it, it's messed up. When a factor other than price, non-price factors affect the supply curve, the entire curve shifts left or right. We saw this with demand as well. So if you remember, if there was something like a change in taste, like if people just moved on and wanted to buy other products, then the demand could shift over. So I still haven't gotten word on Chromebooks, so anytime now. I hope y'all had fun taking the SAT yesterday.
It would have been awesome if I could have taken the
what?
the essay.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask her about that because
I don't think we'll be able to.
It's not how it works. I think the only other thing we can do is, I'm not sure, I'd have to look it up. But see, I'm not the administrator for it. I was just the proctor. I was just a guy who reads off the instructions to you and monitors. You're going to have to ask her if you still want to take the essay portion. So I'm not sure if you have to retake the whole thing or just that portion. I don't know how it works. But don't be surprised either way. I'm not saying that to discourage you. It's just, they're very set on the rules for this, just so you know. But unfortunately, I'm not the one in charge. I'm not in charge of ordering it or setting it up, so I don't know how that works. Let's go and move on to the next one. Okay, go back. All right, so just keep in mind, if it's a change that does not have to do with price, it can move left or right. So it'll still be the same shape, but the whole curve would shift over. I mean, and you see that sometimes with certain things, such as fuel prices and stuff like that. It'll still be the same difference from one area to another, but everyone shifts at once.
So, you know what combat engineers do?
Yeah, combat engineer is somebody who, regular military engineers do things like build bridges, airstrips, stuff like that, and, toilets. But a combat engineer is basically, you could think of like a sapper. It's somebody who usually does things like work with explosives, to do things like to remove walls, obstacles. Yeah, they can set up defensive traps and things like that as well, like anti-personnel or tank mines and stuff like that. In a pinch, you could use them to clear mines, but that's not ideal. You want IED people to do that. But yeah, Yeah, they're the guys who mess with explosives the most. So. But they're also a frontline troop, so they get shot at more.
That's cool. And you need like either an architecture or
Nope. Combat engineer can be any kid out of high school, go through training and do it.
Yeah, but to like be an officer.
Yeah, to be an officer, yeah, you want a 4-year degree.
Yeah.
And then you're going to want to go through
because commissioning is competitive, right?
It is, but I mean, it's like.
Because I mean, if I have like a liberal arts degree, I'm probably not going to get a combat.
The degree doesn't matter as much as you think, but it can. But yeah, they would prefer it if you had a degree that was closer to the job. But yeah, like for some jobs, though, you got to think when you're getting commissioned, you also still have to have other training, like and have in that particular field. So like to be an infantry, you're going to have to be an officer. They're going to have to go through more rigorous training than somebody who wants to be a supply officer or something like that. But yeah, combat engineer, I don't know. I've worked with them, but I got to use the things they made for me, the toys, but that's about it. So, yeah. It's nice blowing stuff up. All right, moving on. Non-price factors that affect supply. So examples, not examples. These factors will cause the supply curve to shift left when there's less quantity supplied, or right when there's more quantity supplied. We're going to see examples in a bit. So there are 3 non-price factors that influence supply. So let's go ahead and see what those are. First is to change. Oh, okay. I know you're writing that part down. So this is whenever you're looking at the actual chart. The thing is, though, when you see the charts, they just make sense, right? Like you all know how to read charts. You've been reading charts and graphs through math ever since you're like in 3rd grade. And when you're talking about like how many apples are in the orchard, and there's pictures of apples on the chart. So I hope you can still read charts and graphs. Wait, stop it. Pie charts, bar graphs, got line plots, all of those, right? I mean, they're visuals, so they're so easy to follow along. That's why they're there. They're for people like me. Here, I'll freeze it for a second. Skip ahead. Fun example of a supply chart.
Red spot is in the base. Red spot is in the base.
All right, moving right along. Sounds like y'all are done. All right, so one example of this is a change in cost of production. If a producer can find a cheaper way to produce an item, its supply curve will change. So, of course, this usually has to do with technology. So, as things get easier to make, for example, you've been writing books long and expensive when you're doing it by hand, when you're like a medieval monk working on vellum, just stitching away with your little
Monk hand.
stylus. I was going to say, no, not that. So, but once you have the printing press, thanks, Gutenberg, result, more books offered at lower price. Yeah, when the printing press really takes off, you're going to have an explosion of books throughout Europe, especially picture books. The Bible was the most printed material, but the second most printed was picture
The Bible
books.
is still the most bought book to this day.
Technically,
Yes.
that's what I'm talking about.
It was probably the first book to be stitched by a monk and probably will be the last to be made. Just think about how many are being constantly and how many are being bought.
Yeah. Makes you wonder what happens to all those old ones.
Did you know 99% of all ancient works are lost? We only really have a window into the ancient history by 1% of all ancient works.
I can believe it.
What's that? Well,
Well, there's something like 90% of all academic literature in the humanities goes unread. So like academic papers, thesis,
because it's constantly being
dissertations. Well, yeah, nobody wants to read it. I mean, there's no demand for it. People just write these things to get like degrees and stuff. And then it goes into a library and never gets read. Whether that's useful or not, it's up to you. So. All right, Terry, to move on to number 2. All right, so this is usually a change in technology. I guess it could go the other way, if we kind of like have like a end of the world as we know it situation and technology regresses. Maybe. Kind of go back to the caveman
Stuff
days.
like that has kind of happened where like there's like a progression in something, and then people just like abandon it because they don't really want it anymore.
Yeah.
Like that's basically what happened. Like for example, I'm just gonna use this as an example, but like stereograph cards.
Okay.
Like the ones that I brought in. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like the stereoscope cards.
Yeah.
Like the stereoscopes. They're pretty advanced for how old they are. Taking photos. But people just abandoned them and they stopped making them. And, the last few ones that were being made were made much cheaper than the ones in the peak in like the teens and hundreds.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, taste can shift, especially whenever it's something that has to do with entertainment value.
But the later ones usually have like thinner cards and they're like less good looking.
Okay. So they're like, they're cheaper. All right, number 2, kids. Price of resources change. So this has to do with the price of resources. Remember, we talked about that go into making something. So human resources. If you have to pay your worker more, well, you're going to have less incentive to make more pizza because you're going to have to lose more of your profits into creating that pizza, which means you might have to raise the price of pizza, which means you're selling less pizza. So natural resources. If the cheese, for some reason, there's like a cow plague and the cheese like starts,
Getting cow plague?
no, but like there's less cows making like milk for the cheese, then yeah, cheese prices go up.
Or it was like whenever the Bluebell famine happened.
Oh yeah, I remember that. People were like, I don't have a Bluebell, and they're like, the factory
Dairy Palace in Canton had T-shirts made for it. Like it was a big deal because Dairy Palace in Canton is the best place to eat food. And
Dairy Palace is pretty good. Dairy Palace is great in all places.
As a kid tonight,
I went there once and I got the bison burger and
snacks.
well, I went and I was the only person there and I got it, but they burnt the snot out of it and I was like, this is so dry.
What time? If it was late,
It was I don't know. It's probably more like 2:00 in the afternoon. It was like nobody else there, but it was a weekday. It was away from. I think I caught them at an odd time.
Sundays are the best time.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I
not
usually go on Saturdays to the flea market if I go, which is rare. A couple of times I think.
all right. Second example: rent increases. So so that remember, guys. Of course, this can also be like things like taxation, regulation, stuff like that as well. So anything that changes how much it costs simply to operate. So you have human resource costs, natural resources, the things you use to make the item, and of course, just capital resources, which has to do with like what you're able to do within a given space. So all of these things can affect the price. So if workers make less, then you can profit more off a lower price of pizza. That kind of stinks with workers. Natural resources, if it's cheaper, you profit more from selling that item. And the reverse is true as well. And of course, same with rent. So if you're like have one of those places where you get to basically kind of like run it for free, like if it's an at-home business, then you're definitely doing better, provided you get your home paid off. All right, last one, maximize profit. If a producer makes more profit selling one product instead of another, the supply of both products change. So what this means is you're going to produce more of the thing that makes you more money, more profit. Example, price of DVDs and VCR tapes remain the same, but I can make more profit selling DVDs. Of course, I mean, like, anybody still buy DVDs?
You asked that yesterday.
Yes, I mean,
My wife bought a DVD like the other day, and it was the first one we got
I'll
in
go to
years.
Walmart and get like the $5 DVDs.
Yeah,
Like it's a movie that I want to watch, but if not, no.
Order like
Okay.
Redbox or something.
I just
Red
have.
box it.
The
Yeah.
last DVD I used was like a game.
Game
A
DVD.
game disc.
Has anyone here seen Starship Troopers?
Yes.
It has nothing to do with the book. Like
There's
the
a-
book is nothing like it.
Well, doesn't it still have like the same concept about the government?
No.
I'm doing
No.
What's the government like in the?
In the Starship in Starship Troopers, the book, the government is actually like a benign force of the people, right? More about like has more to do with like your rights. Whereas like the director who actually made that movie said he started reading the book and he threw it away because he didn't like it, and so he just kind of went in a different
I heard about
direction.
that actually.
So yeah, like the movie was actually supposed to be like he said it was like his idea of like an ultra fascist government.
I think the
And
movie
so
does that
just-
too, but it's more action packed.
But no, the book wasn't supposed to be like about fascism. The book was supposed to be about democracy, basically stopping like communism, essentially.
Okay, so the movie was freaking awesome.
Well, yeah, I had entertaining parts, but
Come on, you eggs! You want to live forever?
Yeah.
I'm my party.
Rico's back.
Oh no, was it Rico? So good.
Hey, Rico, you died.
That's not one point. I can't get over. It's disembodied.
Oh yeah, he's like, hey Rico.
Such a good part.
all right. So
You want my initial?
let's go on to the next part because I really want to talk about Thomas Sowell in a second.
Can we watch Starship Troopers with you?
It's
It's probably not a good idea.
I mean, no, yeah, that movie's rated R. Yeah, I'll get in trouble. All right. So how does scarcity of an item affect the supply? If an item is scarce, then there is little or no supply. So, like gas, if there's no gas, the price of gas goes up because what little you got, you're going to part with for a higher price, right? It's more precious.
Did you hear about one of the biggest deals in game industry economics recently?
No.
7.5 billion. Microsoft bought ZeniMax Studios / Bethesda for 7.5 billion. The next biggest one was ZeniMax. I mean, not ZeniMax. It was whenever Tencent bought Tap Games.
Is this good or bad?
For
Bad
Bethesda,
for
actually,
Sony, good for everyone else.
Okay.
Like PS5, there is.
yeah, and the game, and pretty much
Uh-huh.
paid that much just to have two companies. Of course, Bethesda and Microsoft have been working together for a while, but Microsoft finally bought Bethesda.
Okay.
There's rumors it's gonna be an Xbox.
That's like
Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 are going to be Game Pass for a while.
All right. So if an item is scarce, then there's little or no supply. So that's scarcity is important for us. How does a boycott affect supply? Supply for a boycotted item increases because nobody's buying it, right? But the thing is that's also that could be a shift in demand. If a boycott's particularly popular, then nobody's going to buy the item. During the Montgomery bus boycott, there was an increased supply of bus seats because nobody was riding the bus. This, of course, has to do with the civil rights movement, with Rosa Parks and all that stuff.
Could you go back to the
Come on, Michael. I can't do that now. I have people writing out this one
Okay, once we finish, I think we go back like 5 seconds.
for like 5 seconds. Yeah. So, I mean, like, think about like our founders with like the Tea Party and stuff. There was a huge boycott of tea in the American colonies. So the docks were full of it, and Americans found an alternative, started drinking coffee. So yeah, the price for tea went down, 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 down.
Who was the
And-
guy who started drinking coffee? He was like, this is very American.
It was a month. I think it was like a month or
I
something.
thought it was like the.
I know James Madison started trying to popularize it after the trip.
I think tea was, or root beer was started by like a monk, like monks. They would take the root of whatever it was, like the actual root, like
Yeah.
off the tree or whatever, and they would like boil it and drink it like that, and then it became what it is today.
Eventually.
I didn't know that. I know when I was a kid, I loved root beer. It's like,
Root beer is.
all right, Michael, there you go. When items scarce, there's little or no supply. That's it. There's little or no supply, then the price goes up. I mean, if there's less of something, it's more valuable. Moving right along. So here's a question. How does the war in Afghanistan affect supply? Increase the supply of war-related materials. Of course, this is like during its high point. The military will pay more for metal, cloth, masks, etc. So businesses increase their supply, increase supply of news. That's true. That happens every time there's something crazy going on. Decrease supply of certain items such as gasoline. Not so much now, of course. But yeah, during its high point, we were building so many hospitals. We've given them so many like jet fighters and stuff like that too, which led to an increase of demand for the parts for that. Of course, to this day, they still don't have a successful Air Force. So
Ooh, I just thought of
That's-
another thing about that.
yeah, Afghanistan's not the first country that was third world, and we tried to help train a good Air Force and even gave them everything, and it didn't work. So it's kind of hard to do.
Also, the reason we have such a good Air Force is because we were more. Our country has like we were raised by the plane because we're the people who first made the plane, and we continued with it for like a while.
I can see
We're
that.
trying to improve upon the plane.
Okay, so it's something that's culturally ingrained in us. Now, not just anybody can do it, though. We got a large population of educated, capable people that were able to pull the best to do that. Especially when you're talking about, like I was talking about, jet fighters. That's like the cream of the crop. That's not just a pilot. That's like a really good pilot. It takes a lot of training. And they have to get weeded out to make sure you don't have the wrong people for it. So, yeah. Okay, I won't change it. Hey, folks, we're going to end that for today. So if you need the notes, make sure you go to Google Classroom, and I'll talk to you later.
Okay, so real quick.
Yeah.
Like according to like what Joe was saying.
Yeah.
Okay, if we had a bunch of people,
Yeah.
how would we have the materials to make more military vehicles and
Yeah.
that?
So that's why traditionally America has tried to make sure all of its war supplies are made in America, right? We've kind of moved away from that, though.
Right.
So yeah, if we did go to war with the wrong people, that would ruin some of the supplies.
Where do we get most of our metals from?
Us
Oh,
natural
okay.
materials, most of that comes from us.
I thought we got like iron and stuff like that from like Russia or something.
That's kind of expensive to transport. I don't know about that. Let's Googleize it. Oh, it's still recording.
Only Indiana Jones.